Right then, today on Welding Up Hot Garbage, I've finally got a decent day weather-wise and some time in my schedule so I can crack on with sorting out this troublesome arch on the Maestro. And I have to say that the new welder is some sort of magic. Compared to every other welder I've used, it's amazing. It does what I want it to do. I don't know how it's doing it, but it's doing it. The mistake I had made with this arch is I'd misaligned the inner arch, trimmed the outer arch to suit, and then nothing fit. That then gave me a problem in that the inner arch was nowhere near the right location, and I have now been trying to get this back to somewhere where it should be. There are probably better ways to do this, but as you know, I work outside on the drive. I don't have all the tools, and I definitely don't all have all the skills. With the outer arch off, you can see the extent of both the rust as was in there and how badly misaligned I'd done everything, because this arch lip here was welded back to what's on the arch there. Oops. First thing I did was I took this arch lip, married it up to the repair panel and taped them together. This meant that basically this arch was in the right place when the outer panel was on, so I knew things were going to line up. The only issue then was I needed to bridge this gap, because I've got to cut some pieces and fill this now to sort out the inner arch before the outer arch can go on. Thankfully, because I've cut so much away, access is pretty good. This area here isn't on the repair panel and was just rot on the car, so I have to build all of that from scratch, but that's going to be easier once I have this piece in. From the back, and it is very awkward to do, I cut little tabs of metal, taped them in place because I can't get in with magnets or clamps, and then just spot welded them. This makes this panel sit exactly where I need it to, and then I can adjust everything else around it to fill in the gap. This is not going to be a pretty repair. But the only person that's really ever in my arches is going to be the MOT tester, so as long as there's no holes here, and as long as it's nice and weather tight, I don't really care what it looks like. You cannot get this panel. I do not have the skills to build it from scratch. I'm going to have to patchwork it. That's just the reality of the situation. I am going to do my best to sort out situations like here. I think there's probably going to need to be a little bit of tweaking. I think the inner arch here is a little bit bent out of shape, so I probably need to bring this side up to meet this lip here, and then I can continue bridging. Getting that panel in like that is probably the hardest part of this job, and I don't really know a better way to do it with the tools that I have access to. So this is how I'm doing it. Usual masking tape template seems the most sensible way to do it. Also gives you a good idea of the shape that I have to build here. I think I have enough to do this in one strip. Then I'll need to do another piece down here and this closing point here for the end of the sill. I should have enough on the repair panel to do the end of the sill that's damaged there as well. I'm not really enjoying this job. It's difficult and it's unstable at the moment. As soon as I get the repair piece tacked in, it should go a bit smoother, I hope, because then I can start adjusting the panels to fit properly. At the moment it's too easy to just throw things out, and it's very difficult to actually check fitment and keep everything where I need it. So the sooner I can get a proper patch in there, the better. Those tack pieces that are underneath, they're going to be removed. They're just temporary, just to hold everything where I need it, really. Now I just need to skin this over. Well, it doesn't look like much, and yeah, we're not going to be winning any shows, but the repair panel is tacked in. I can now do some of the finer trimming to give myself some better gaps. I can't quite do any smoothing out on this piece. It's got an odd curve to it, so it's sort of like a compound curve slightly. So it's kind of tricky to get it just so, but that's the first big section in. I'm happy. I've offered up the outer arch. The fit is close enough that I'm not worrying. Once the lip is plug welded in and out together, we should be fine. It meets up on the sill, the body lines meet up where I need them to. That's the important stuff. I need to cut this piece because I didn't quite have enough in that big piece of metal there to just bridge that gap, and then I can look at rebuilding down here. That's a relief. I thought that was going to fight me a lot more than it ended up doing. It's some time later and the patchwork quilt is complete. I am okay with it. I'm certainly not proud of it, and I'm not going to give you a closer look because the welds are very variable. As I've been going, there's been a breeze rushing through here, and you start welding and it just blows your gas away, and then you have to redo the welds. So no beautiful internet welds here. This is purely functional. But the really good thing is the entire inner arch is now fully rebuilt. The outer arch fits well enough that I can just do a few tweaks and adjustments, and that will go in place okay. When the car's back together, unless it's parked next to another Maestro, you won't know that it's slightly off. And how likely is it I'm going to end up parked next to another Maestro? Should we do professional bodywork on this car in the future, obviously areas like this will be revisited. But for what it is and what I need, this is structurally sound. It's better than filler and rust. And well, the weather's beginning to close in here, so I'm going to get this all sealed up and weatherproof. I'm not going to get the outer arch on today. I'll have to do that another day. But I'm just glad with the progress that I've made so far. Just tidying up for the day now. I will come back and do that outer arch as soon as I can, hopefully tomorrow. We'll see what the weather lets me do and what work lets me do. But got the seam sealer on. So any pinholes that are in there are not going to be a problem. I've seam sealed it from the back as well, because, well, I don't want to take any chances. There's a lot of patching in here, and it's, yeah, I would have liked to just put a new tub in, but you can't get them. Or at least not when I'm recording this. I've given it a splash over with some incorrect red. No point colour matching for this. And then to finish off, I'm just going to use some of this stuff. It will do the trick. It worked quite well on the Princess at keeping the rust at bay, so I see no reason why it won't work here. What a relief to get that done finally. The next bit should be a lot easier, even if I have to go slower with the welding, because it'll all be on show, which is just what you want with this sort of job. All undersealed, as well as the inside of the arch and the bit I can't really show you, which is the back of this lip, just to make sure it's all safe. The only bit I haven't done is the return, because I'm going to have to be doing a couple of welds on there just to hold the inner and outer arch together. I do have to do that on the other side, because I don't think I did, and I need to underseal the arch on the other side. Now, the reason for undersealing this area and using the seam sealant is I cannot get to this when the outer arch is on. I'm a little bit nervous about the fact that I'll have some welding up here that I can't easily get to the back of once this is all in one piece. I'll do my best. I think I can probably do something with a spray can or something, I'm not sure, but this is protected now from the elements. If the weather changes and I find I can't come back to this for a few days, this should be fairly stable and shouldn't cause me any extra work. Not worried about getting it on the bodywork here. I've got to clean a lot of this back anyway for the welding, so that's not an issue, but I am glad to have that finished. It has been too long waiting for everything to line up for me to be able to do it. So I'm happy I finally have. You can see the repair panel has some ripples in it. That's just the piece I used was just like that. And it's very patchworky, but there's no whiskers, there's no holes. There's no filler, which is really nice. So hopefully this should see us good for a few more years. I haven't really turned the camera on for any of this job, just got on and did it. But I'm having some issues with the panel that I'm using. Now, on this side I could get a proper repair panel to do the car. And I thought, oh, that'll make life a lot easier. The only thing is, it doesn't really seem to fit the car properly. The other side I used two front wings. The issue is you've got the lower body line here, which lines up with the same on the wing, on the repair panel. Now the gap there is because I made a trimming and alignment mistake early on. But down at the bottom, I've actually had to cut and shorten the arch, because when you lined up that top body line, this corner here that's supposed to line up just didn't at all. It didn't even come close. The panel was a good inch too long. I don't know why. There's a number of reasons. It could be the panel. It could be the inner arch repair I've done is misaligned slightly. It could also be the fact that the very end of this sill has been repaired before me, and then has rusted out, and then has got filler on it, and all of your reference points in that area are completely gone. So I am literally having to make it up as I go along. It does mean this side is not the same shape as the other side, and if I was restoring the car, that would bother me. I'm not, I'm repairing the car, so all I care about is it being solid. So I have a piece to wrap around here under the sill to complete the bit that's rusted out there. I have the gap to put in there, and I have the trailing edge to do there. Nearly finished. The other problem is I am running out of welding gas, so I doubt very much that I'm going to get this finished today. I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to tack as many pieces in as I can to get it all ready, and we'll see how far I can get on the gas I've got. We're a bit further along. It's a lot of tack, stop, tack, stop, tack, stop. Tedious. I don't want to warp this panel if I can help it. First thing I did was got the panel roughly cut to the shape I want, but it was too long on purpose because I didn't want to have to cut this twice. Now unfortunately I didn't have a long enough piece to do the square at the end here. I'll have to put another one in there. And what you do is you tack one edge, in my case I did the top, after putting the repair piece in from behind. You then push on the panel to make it meet up here and tack along there, much more sparingly than this. Use your angle grinder to cut through both panels. I used this one as a guide so that you get a line that meets up. Now there's other fabricators out there that do a much better job of this sort of thing than I have. But eventually you end up, after retacking and cutting, with your loose piece here, falls off inside the wheel arch and you can pull it out. You then end up with a reasonable join along the bottom. The join I have on the top isn't that great. And these are just tacks. Some of the tacks look quite bad. That's because, well, the wind keeps blowing my gas away as I'm working, so that's a bit frustrating. But now I have to basically tack between the tacks, let the panel cool down, tack between the tacks, and repeat until it's done, because I don't want too much heat in this panel. It's very thin steel, and I'm going to have enough filling work to do as it is without putting even more warp and rippling in here. In an ideal world, I would replace this entire quarter with a new one. I'd replace the inner tub with a new one. I'd have a better workshop for making panels, you know? But I don't live in an ideal world, I live in the real world, unfortunately. Getting in at the back, you can see how it's burned the paint off the various panels. I've got my wires here, which of course I'm being careful of. Now, I can get round most of this, so I'm going to do a messy job in there of just covering everything up when it's done to prevent it from rusting. This isn't ideal, and I'm sure somebody is waiting to criticise the way I'm doing it, but yeah. Unless you're able to come and do it for me and do a better job, which I would appreciate, I don't think the criticism's going to help that much. With some help from my little friend, it's mostly done. I do need some new flat wheels though. That one is worn out and it's not going through anything. But the panel isn't monstrously wavy. I'll know better when I get some paint on this, which is my next job. The door shuts nicely, the gap seems to be tolerable, so that's good. Still need to do that section, still need to do that section. I need some more welding gas. It's progress, it's not as scary as I thought, and amazingly I haven't burned this off, which I thought I was going to end up doing. It looks like I can even paint around it, which is great. Right, let's get some protection on this before the weather closes in, because it's not great. It feels like it's trying to rain. It probably will soon. One quick squirt of You're Doing It Wrong red, and it's passable. There's some more grinding to go on the welds just to smooth them out, but I'm actually quite pleased with how little distortion there is in this panel. I was really expecting that to give me a lot more grief than it has, so that's a good thing. That reduces how much filling I have to do. A fresh flat wheel will help me just get the high points knocked back a bit. The bottom corner here, I'm not 100% happy with it, but honestly there's not much I can do about it. It'll just have to do. Once it's got filler on, you won't really see it, so it is what it is, as they say. Didn't have enough time or materials to finish this section here, same with the undersill piece, but I did get that little square done. That wasn't too bad. That used up the last of my gas. But it does mean that the majority of the weather that's going to come down on this will just wash straight off, so I'm happy about that, and this little gap here shouldn't cause any problems, I hope. I'm officially now definitely out of gas. I thought I'd see just how far what was left in the bottle would really go, despite what the gauges were telling me, and it allowed me to just get this section here finished off. There's no filler on here yet, and yeah, I know it's not exactly the right shape and it's lumpy bumpy, but it's not rusty and it's not full of filler. That's the important bit. The one thing I'm unhappy with is this profile on the front. On the pressing for this panel, for some reason it was just completely different to what's on the car. So it flares out much too far. I think I'm just going to leave it. I do need to do the bit on the sill here. I haven't got enough gas to finish that off. I also don't have a repair section for that, so I'll have to do that from scratch. It's just in flame red at the moment rather than Targa red. That's what I had, and it's just going to have to stay like this for now, because the other problem I've had is this welding helmet has gone completely on the fritz and just doesn't dim sometimes, which is great. Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to replace that. I've cleaned it, I've followed the instructions to try and fix what it's doing, and yeah, it's I think it's just dead, which is a shame, but then it wasn't very expensive. It's just another thing to pay for.